Hey there, I'm Chuck Moran with Online Video Mastery, and I am here today to clear up confusion around copyright for content creators. I found over the years that there is a lot of confusion about fair use and permissions and how to get it and all that stuff. And I don't know how to do this myself, so I'm very happy to be joined today by Danielle Liss. Danielle is an online business attorney. She has almost 10 years of experience doing this, which in internet years is quite a good bit of time. So I'm very happy to have Danielle along with me today to straighten all of this stuff out for us. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Danielle is a passionate legal representative for small business owners. She is the owner of Business Ease, and I have to say she's my intellectual property attorney, and I'm very happy with the results I've gotten. She sells DIY legal templates, so I'm going to put a link in the show notes so that you can get access to those templates. She also has a law firm called Liss Legal, where she focuses on her practice on online business owners, bloggers, and influencers, as well as wellness professionals. Danielle has previously served as chief marketing officer and general counsel of an influencer network, as well as general counsel and vice president of affiliate programs for an 8-figure digital health and wellness company. So, Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad. I think this is a huge area of confusion. I really do. I have a client and a good friend who ran into this copyright bulldozer in the worst possible way. She has a nonprofit, and she had it. She's retired now, but she had this nonprofit, and she got a cease and desist letter from Getty Images.
Mhm.
And Getty wrote to her saying that she had illegally used an image from their library in one of her pieces of content. Well, when she asked what it was, they proved to her that there was a piece of their content in one of her in a PDF. It was not on the web. It was not, well, the PDF was on the web, but it was not on a website. It was not on her social or anything really obvious. It was on page 32 of a PDF. And it was an image that an intern had created where she had morphed several images together and used a Getty image of a cow in the background as in a layered format. But there was enough of the original cow showing that caught Getty's secret search engine, where they were able to determine that she was illegally using it. Anyway, they brought the hammer down on my colleague and tried to charge her a big bunch of money. Luckily, she was able to negotiate it down, but she still had to pay for it. And the fact that that first of all, it was created without her knowledge by an intern who didn't know better leads me to think that there's a huge risk for us as content creators out there. So, Danielle, tell me a little bit about Getty and some of the stories that you may have heard about what
Oh,
they're up to.
there are many. And I think that any of the large image agencies, they do have really great search tools where they can look, and they are very well known for sending out cease and desist letters. And often if you have an attorney reply, suddenly the number, if it starts out 5 figures, it suddenly comes down very low. And it just at that stage, it's like, do I want to pay the attorney this much to fight it, or do I want to just pay it and be done? So, and we often refer to that as a cost of defense settlement, because you're just kind of doing it because it's going to cost you the same amount either way. But so often I think that, and I want to say this, I feel like this was more of an issue a few years ago, and we've talked about this offline, where for a long time people said, I went to Google image search and I right clicked, and that's fine. I can use that image. It's in the public domain. I'm like, oh, that's not what that word means. So I think that there is just a level of confusion that goes along with it, and with even stock images, because no matter what, there's still a copyright around something. And the key is, who has the copyright? What are they saying you can do with it? And what kind of license do you have on that piece of content to be able to use it. And if you haven't gotten a license, you probably need to say, okay, if I don't have a license on it, does this fall into the concept of fair use, which is honestly, it's a very nuanced area of law and it can get a little bit confusing because different courts say different things about it. So it's important to know where's your content coming from. And also, like you said, if it was an intern that did it, you need to make sure that you've got kind of your standard operating procedures within your company so that everyone is clear on what those policies are, where you should be getting images, how they should be treated, and where they're coming from. And even if you're, outsourcing to an agency, it's really important to say to them, where are my images coming from if they're creating content for you? What is the license on those images? Because at the end of the day, if they're being posted under your name, it's likely going to be you who is in the line of receiving that initial cease and desist letter, even if it was from someone else. And it's then up to you to kind of wrangle with them as to who has the ultimate responsibility for it.
Yeah, well, well, I think there's the confusion is exaggerated by the number of terms that are out there. So fair use, royalty free. Royalty free sounds good. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to hop on here, right click. I found this thing on Google. I can put it on my website because it says it's a royalty free image.
Mhm.
Um, I want to make it clear that we're talking about using other people's content in all sorts of ways. So if you're a blogger, we're talking about your blogs. If you're a YouTuber, we're talking about your YouTube videos. Whatever type of digital content you're using, there is, in all likelihood, a copyright on something that you're considering using. So Danielle, I know you've got a basic black and white rule of thumb. So
Yeah.
let's dive into that for a second.
Sure. So let's first talk about the definition of a copyright because I think it's really important to understand what that is. And so a copyright is a form of intellectual property that protects original works of authorship in a fixed tangible medium. And I know I just gave you a whole boatload of legalese in that. So an original work of authorship means it's something that's been created by someone. So that author is the creator of that original work. The idea that it is fixed in a tangible medium means the form of expression of that creative piece of content. Usually that's going to be things like an image, a book, a screenplay, a video, a piece of copy. It is how it is expressed. Now, it's also important to know what isn't considered copyrightable content. And that's going to be things like ideas, titles, lists of ingredients or lists of steps, processes, systems, things along those lines are not considered copyrightable because they say there's a lack of creativity that goes into them. I find this fascinating because as a person who, let's just say I'm kitchen challenged, I do not have the creative ability to go in and say, let me create this amazing set of steps for these foods and it would be something good. It would be something awful and it would be burnt. But all that said, they have said that a recipe is not something that is copyrightable because it's a list of steps. However, if you express it with some creativity around it, like meaning you've got creative copy or a creative story or things like that, then it is more likely to be copyrightable. So that's really what I want you to remember. We are talking about something that another person has put their creativity into and it's original. They were the author, they put it out into that whatever the medium was, they have the copyright on that piece of content. There are different rights that come along with being a copyright holder. So think of copyright as your umbrella. And then underneath of it, there are a number of different rights that go there. So it's the ability to create derivative works, the ability to perform, the ability to display, to sell, to reproduce. Things along those lines are all different rights. So, what we're talking about most of the time for online content creators is that you want to display someone else's content. And I'd say that's most of the time. Sometimes you may want to have a performance element, but for the most part, you are looking to reproduce it and display it in some way. So, you need to make sure that when you are looking at someone else's copyright, what whether or not you have the right to then use that content in the way that you want. And that might be one of the things that you talked about were all the different ways that things are listed. So it might be royalty free, but royalty free might mean that you still need to give attribution if you want to use it. And all attribution means is that you need to give credits. It's that simple. But you need to know that. You need to know where to look for it. Um, I know a lot of folks are Canva users. So, for example, if you go into Canva, you can look and find what their license is for the stock imagery that they offer on the Canva platform. And they are so specific, which I really appreciate. They'll be like, you can use it for this, you can't use it for this. You can use it for this as long as it's this size. So, really, it's about navigating and understanding what your ability to use it is. Can you just go and right click on anything? I don't recommend it. I generally say everything has a copyright. You asked about that black and white rule. I assume that if it is a creative expression, somebody has a copyright on it. And then it's about looking to see how you can use it. Check and see what that license is that they are claiming on that piece of content.
Yeah, gotcha. That's really good. That black and white rule, I think, really will help people. So let's walk through a scenario. Let's say that someone watching this is a blogger,
Mhm.
and she's let's say she's has a cooking show and creates courses around her creations in the kitchen. That's funny about you being cooking challenge. Um, so I guess that's something we won't see on your resume for a while. Um, so so let's say she's starting out, right? And so she's starting to write blog posts. And blog posts are typically made up of lots of words. Typically, they're things that the content creator herself would write herself. She might want to stick in images of baked goods to show what the outcome might be of the muffins that she's planning on making. So she might be looking for muffin images. She also might want to link to someone else's content. So if somebody else is showing how to fold ingredients together, I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't. But folding sounds, it's kind of fun. You just fold stuff in.
Mhm.
You can, let's say that she found a little 3-minute video about how to learn how to fold. So let's just start with those. And then the third one is that she needs a big, nice image up at the top of her blog post of herself in her own kitchen whipping things up. So
Mhm.
let's take those in order, starting from the top of the blog post. If she gets her significant other to take a photograph of her working in her own kitchen, and then she downloads it to her computer and then uploads it to her WordPress site as the featured image, she's good to go, right?
Mhm.
She
She should
created
be.
that.
I mean,
There's
that is her creation. Even if somebody else took the image, as long as they're saying, yes, this image is now yours, or it was specifically taken for her, again, even if she's not behind the camera. Now, if it's a professional photographer who is taking those images and it's like a branding photo shoot, there might be slightly different rules. But generally speaking, if it's somebody who is, you're just saying, hey, can you push the button here and you've staged everything? That's going to be your image that you can use. So that's the first piece. You are okay on anything that you have taken, or as long as there are no rights from the photographer that they are claiming that it should be their content. And normally, when you work with a third party photographer, they're going to be really clear about what your license is and how you can use things. And I always say, read that really carefully, because if you are going to need to edit those images, you may want to negotiate that a little bit and say, no, well, here's what I need to do. Is this covered in your license? And if it's not, it usually just means there's a difference in pricing. So just ask how you're going to use it and just make sure that it's covered and clear, like that you've got the ability to edit if you need to remove backgrounds if you need to. Um, Now, where it gets tricky with what you talked about in that example is the idea of finding other people's images to demonstrate the different steps. There may be some images that it's okay to use. It depends on what the license is for that content. So, like I said, just assume that there is an owner for that piece of content. So, you need to figure out, are you able to use it? If you find that it is what's called a Creative Commons license, then it may be that you can use it as long as you are giving credit or attribution, depending upon what level of Creative Commons license they have. Now, if it's on another blog, you may be able to go to their terms of use or their terms of service and find out if they say whether or not images can be used. While I can't cook, I have worked with many, many food bloggers, and they want to make it clear that if you are using one image from a post in a thumbnail size for a roundup of some sort or for just explan some type of explanation, that you may use one image as long as there is a link back. And a lot of them started giving permissions like that because it's great for them for traffic to be featured in like a BuzzFeed roundup or something along those lines. So check their site and see if there's any type of permissions that they offer. If it's a stock photo, see what you need to do to purchase that image and get the license to use it in the way that you are looking for. And then you can add it. So the key there to using someone else's image is make sure you know how you can use it and what the license is that the copyright holder has put out for it. And if there's nothing listed, reach out. If it's a third party, like a small business owner, I don't think that they may come back to you and say, absolutely not, you can't use it. And guess what? That's a whole lot better than using it and then getting a cease and desist letter. Then you just need to find another image. So, but a lot of times they will come back and say, yeah, if that's how you're using it, please just give me a link and give me credit for it. Because outside links, of course, that's a good thing in the Google world, right? For your SEO and your page ranking and things like that. That's a happy thing, is to have those outside links, as long as they know how you're using it and they've given you approval. What was the last piece you mentioned? Using a video?
Yeah, would be linking out to a video or maybe possibly using a screenshot from, some portion of a video, but just as a thing that you could use to click on to go out to that video on YouTube. How would
Okay,
you handle
so
that?
I think that the most important thing, I am always going to err on the side of get permission. If you're ever going to take a thumbnail or a screenshot or something like that, if you can get permission, I want you to get permission to make sure that you are clear. It could potentially be considered fair use if you are just using one small image from the video, but it gets tricky if it's in commercial use versus educational nonprofit type of use as far as the definition of fair use goes. So it may be linking out to the video, I don't think is a problem. Like I think generally speaking, you're always fine to link out to a video, give credit, you're saying where it is. It's not like you're claiming, this is me, those are my hands folding in ingredients. You're not going to be doing that. It's going to be obvious when they get there. So the question is on the, like, taking a thumbnail and using that to link out. As I said, I would always say to get permission. You could always create just a textual image that's got maybe, video from whomever on how to fold in ingredients, and you send them there just because you want a visual element that goes along with it. Where things can get very tricky, if you are taking a screenshot of someone, be very cautious because people have certain rights in their images as well. It's not just copyright, but you have rights to your likeness. So there are rights to publicity, and different things along those lines, rights to privacy. So especially if, like, let's say you're using, who's a famous chef, like let's say you're using an image of Ina Garten from a video that she had done, then you want to be really careful because she likely has a lot of rights to publicity in her image as a public figure. So you want to be careful about using images of people. But if you created your own just video image, then linking out, there's no issue with that because that's something that you're creating and it's just linking over to their content.
Yeah, well, it really is interesting. Yeah, lots of nuances for people to keep up with. So, one of the best ways to avoid issues, of course, is to use images that you've purchased.
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of deposit photos twice a year through AppSumo, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. You can get a ton of credits, and I think the last bundle of credits I got, maybe I got 100 credits, meaning access to 100 images for 30 or 40 bucks.
So
Do the
good.
math. And these are fantastic. These are fantastic images. There's nothing cheesy about the great body of these kinds of images. But the nice thing is that they come with the rights to use them. you can get the big ones, or you can get the small ones. There's no distinguishing in terms of the rights to use them. There's no attribution. You basically just simply are buying the rights when you download that image and pay your, in this case, 40 cents. I have just a quick side story. When I first started in this business, there were stock photo houses back in the 70s in New York where I got my start. And my boss was typically paying $700 for a stock image at that time. So the fact that we can get really high quality images, too bad for the photographers really who are creating the content, because their businesses have been sucked out from underneath them in a lot of cases. But for us content creators, a place like Deposit Photos, Vector Stock, there are a number of places where you can buy the rights along with the image and then you're safe.
I think that it's really stock photography has gotten a bad name in some circumstances. And I think that they have made great strides. If you looked at it maybe 5 to 10 years ago, oh man, stock photography really just looked like stock photography. It would be like, the most perfect picture of an apple or like somebody doing something super cheesy with the apple. And then there's sometimes like if you look up like bad stock online, you can often find some very funny memes and things kind of showing the wide variety of things that you might find featured. And what I think is important is there has just been a revolution in stock photography that I think it has gotten so good. And one of the biggest complaints I heard for years was the sheer lack of diversity and representation.
Mhm.
And I think that there are many companies that are really moving toward greater inclusion and representation in their images. So you really can find better stock, better representation, better inclusion, and have the ability to know exactly what your rights are to that content. And just be really clear because if you are it, we're talking about content creators. So there is always a potential commercial aspect for this. So you need to be clear on how you can use things commercially. So if you are using it as the cover of an ebook that you are putting onto your website and charging, $10 for or higher or whatever the case might be, you need to make sure that you have the ability to do that because sometimes you may need a different license than just the bare bones license. Like I know on Creative Market is a good example, and they make like other companies, they make their rights really clear. Like if you want to use it for this thing and you're going to charge money for the way it's featured, then it's going to be this extended license as opposed to this other license. Or if it's going to have a certain number of views, I think some will say, if it's going to be seen more than 250,000 times, you need this other license as opposed to the less expensive. So just have an idea of how you want to use it to make sure you are getting the appropriate license.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought up the idea about inclusion and diversity too, Danielle, because I'm finding that it's a lot easier to not only find those images if you're looking, it's a lot easier to find them if you're not looking. By that I mean that if you're on depositphotos.com and you type in woman at laptop with coffee, they will present you with a number of diverse images right off the top. And I think the algorithm has been smartened up to bring that type of content to the foreground. And I think it just reminds everyone that we really do need to be more inclusive with our content creation.
I
So,
agree with you. I can tell you just from personal experience, if I went and I don't really know what the timing was. Like, let's say it was 5 to 7 years ago to some of the sites and entered lawyer. I guarantee you it would have been an older white man in a pinstripe suit every
right.
time. And in like a wood paneled office surrounded by a bunch of books, probably a little scary looking. And I just always thought, I'm like, I am like not that lawyer in like any way, shape, or form. So it was always a little bit daunting to try to find images that worked. And now it is so much easier to find things. And there are certain stock sites that are popping up that really are focused on just certain types of inclusion, whether it is body inclusion, ableist, like making sure that you're not using ableist images is how I should phrase that. But there is a really wide breadth of images available. And I just think it's a great time to take advantage of it. So if as a content creator, you have like this idea of stock in your head as being like, it's the worst, because I think for so long people were like, oh, don't use stock, it's awful. Now it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, it really has. Yeah, we're in a whole new era. And one thing you mentioned to me previously, Danielle, I think is worth touching on, and that is that with all the tools that we have, the different streaming platforms, and being able to go live on Facebook and all those kinds of things, I think we really are. And as you pointed out to me, we're generating our own content, which really does navigate nicely in this world of copyright confusion because we're creating our own content, so there's no issue.
I think whenever you can use your own content, that's the best way to go. But I'm not an exceptional photographer, just like my cooking skills. Uh, so I usually will work with a photographer to say, okay, I need to capture a certain number of branded images and that I can use like with headshots. And I'm very clear with them. I need the ability to edit, to remove backgrounds, and
Mm,
to know that this isn't going to be a problem if I'm creating derivative works. And they say that's fine. So it's some of it can be a matter of as you're creating those images, just making sure you're communicating with the professionals who would be the copyright holder and just saying, okay, I need to either own these copyrights at the end of the day, or I need the ability, the license to be able to make the following changes to that content.
gotcha. Yeah. So let's close with just a little discussion about Creative Commons. I think a lot of people have accidentally or on purpose gotten into, in searches, found their way into the Creative Commons
Mhm.
search tool. And let's just dive in a little bit to what those various, not necessarily each one, but if you could just talk generally about Creative Commons and how you should respond when you're looking through those, the way they declare the rights.
I love Creative Commons. I think it is such a wonderful concept that so many creators came together and said, I want to make sure that this content can be shared, that people can use it without coming to me and getting permission each time. So, what Creative Commons is, it's a licensing structure. And it gives licenses that are based on certain segments of how they have them set up. So I believe there's three. And so their most common is Creative Commons as long as you're giving attribution. So you're giving credit. There may be that you are doing, the second is attribution and share alike. And so what that means is if you are creating something else, it can even be commercial. Yes, I believe that one can be commercial, or maybe not. Don't quote me on that. Sorry. I don't have my notes up with the three types. But if you are doing share alike, whatever you are creating after, that is you have to share it with the same Creative Commons license. So
Mm,
you have to make sure that it's available. You can't create something new and then lock it down if you're using their content. The other is that it is Creative Commons with no derivative works. So you can use it, but you have to use it as is, that you aren't creating it to put into something else. So when it comes to Creative Commons, the key is just, again, looking at the license that comes with that content. Most of the time, you are going to be including attribution. Almost every time, I think, is there needs to be attribution. And credit to the photographer or creator, whatever that person was. And then whether or not you can do certain things with it is what's going to be really important to make sure that, again, you are using it within the rights that they have created because they are still the copyright holder. What you are getting is a license to do certain things.
gotcha. Yeah, that's great. Well, Danielle, this has been fantastic. I know I hope we've cleared up some of the confusion. I know there's a lot of it out there. I run into it often with my own clients, and I see a fair amount of it online as well. So hopefully we can get this out there and clear up some of that confusion. So um, let's tell our viewers how they can reach you and what kinds of work you would be looking for from
Sure.
business owners.
Sure. On the business ease side, if you're a person who likes to DIY, business ease is a great place for you to start out because there are a number of different contracts and templates that I have made as easy as possible for people to create their own legal documents. If you do not want to DIY and you're more interested in done for you legal services, I can likely assist with those at List Legal, which is just listlegal.com. And the goal there is to help people simplify the legal side of their business because I think that sometimes it seems easier to ignore. And I always want to tell people it doesn't have to be this scary aspect of your business. So there I help people with contracts, intellectual property, website policies, e-commerce, all of those pieces that kind of go to creating a very solid foundation for your online business.
Yeah, that's great. I can't help but ask one more question, and that is, how do you distinguish your business from some of these online things like LegalZoom?
So it depends on what you're looking for. If you are looking for DIY and you're comparing it to LegalZoom, chances are it's probably going to be more specific than what you find on LegalZoom. LegalZoom, when they first started, and they've been around for a while now, but when they first started, a lot of what they have is more general. So, like if you were hiring somebody, it might be generic independent contractor form. Whereas what we have on Business Ease is far more specific. So it will be client agreement or group program agreement for any number of different business types. So if it is online business owners, VAs, social media managers, website designers, graphic designers, all of those things, we've tried to make it specific so that it really does impact that business. And as far as differentiating the law firm from LegalZoom, everything is still done virtually. So it's extremely convenient for most people where you don't have to go to the lawyer's office and meet with them and that type of thing. But it is very customized for your business.
Yeah, that's great. Just putting in a plug for Daniel. I encountered you someplace online. We've never met
Mhm.
in person. I hired you for a couple of things, and I've been extremely happy with the results. I believe the most recent thing was an affiliate contract for affiliates for a marketing program that I was undertaking. So please do take a look at Danielle's websites, and I'll put links in the show notes below. So, Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today on the Online Video Mastery Show and hopefully clearing up copyright for a whole lot of content creators.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.